Hey Grauwelt fans, it's me again, Vic Salinas, with another episode in the How to Make Your Own Fantasy Language series. In this episode, we're going to be going over basic verbs. I know a lot of you have commented on other YouTube videos and emailed me asking when this third part was going to be coming out, and I know it's been a little bit late. I do apologize for that, but I do have a couple of them that are going to be coming out in the next few weeks that cover verbs, and I'm also going to do some about numbers and a lot of other parts of speech that you guys have been asking me for, so look forward to that in the coming weeks. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone for watching and rating these videos and contacting me personally with questions and comments about the How to Make Your Own Fantasy Language videos. When I started off doing this, I didn't realize that there was a need for this sort of thing. A lot of people have told me that they're not able to find these sort of resources out there on the internet, or if they do find them, they're not quite what they're looking for. So I am very glad that I could provide this sort of service for everyone watching these. And so I just want to thank all of you for your support in this video series and my other videos as well. I definitely would not be doing this if it weren't for you guys watching and asking questions. So thank you very much for that. You can always feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below or contact me personally at victor.salinas@grauwelt.com. I do always get back to everyone that sends me an email or comments. It may take me a little bit depending on how busy I am at the moment, but I do promise to read it and do my best to get back to you in as timely a manner as possible. So as you're watching this, if you have any questions or comments, type up an email or leave your thoughts in the comment section of this video. It would help out the video series a lot. So moving on to the lesson for this episode, we're going to be talking about verbs, very basic verbs. Verbs are some of the most important parts of language. A verb demonstrates an action that a person, place, or thing does in some way. Verbs are the active part of language, and without them, you really couldn't communicate anything very effectively. You could just point out nouns, persons, places, things, and there would be no action, there would be no activity. So language would be very limited, and what we could convey to each other would be severely limited. We wouldn't be able to describe our thoughts and feelings and our plans for the future or what had happened to us in the past very well. So the basic form of all verbs is the infinitive. The infinitive kind of demonstrates the verb in a neutral state without being changed in any way. When a verb is changed from the infinitive, it's called conjugation, which we'll get into a little bit later in the video. But the infinitive form of a verb is kind of just an inert state of the verb. In English, the verb to walk is the infinitive form. Anytime you see that in English, like to walk, to run, to speak, to think, with that to in front of it, that is the infinitive. To compare that with some other languages that we've discussed before, in Spanish, it's caminar. In Italian, it's caminare. In Portuguese, it's andar. And in French, it's marche. So those are some other examples of infinitives from the Romance languages that we're using to create our fantasy language in this video series called Seidal. For example, the infinitive to walk can be changed to I walk. That's a very basic conjugation. We're changing the infinitive to walk, and then we're modifying it to show the subject, I, and then walk doesn't change in English's case, but that shows us the way that's conjugated, that it's happening in the present right now. Likewise, for example, in Spanish, caminar changes to camino, which means I walk, in the same way. So depending on the language, infinitives have a lot of different forms. They can change things like prefixes, suffixes, or add new kind of auxiliary words like English does to show the tense and subject. As I mentioned earlier, these changes are called conjugation, which is essentially modifying the infinitive form of the verb to suit a new subject or tense. In this video, we're going to come up with the present and preterite tenses for the fantasy language Seidal that we've been working on. And again, we'll be using the modern Romance languages as our points of inspiration for the kind of peculiarities of the grammar and sound of the language. So the first of the tenses that we'll be inventing here for our language is the present tense. And the present tense demonstrates actions that are happening right now. So again, another example is I speak is in the present tense in English. And we take the infinitive form to speak and drop the to and add the subject I. So to speak becomes I speak. There's a very basic English present tense conjugation. In Romance languages is a little different. I think it's a little bit easier. The ending of the infinitive verb is what changes. In Italian, Portuguese, and Spanish, the stem of the verb stays the same while the suffix changes to suit the tense and subject. And I know I didn't mention French. We're going to leave that off to the side for this video since French is more like English in the way that it conjugates things. So we're just focused on Italian, Portuguese, and Spanish. For example, in Spanish, hablar, to speak, becomes hablo. In Portuguese, falar becomes falo. In Italian, parlare becomes parlo. And in each one of these, you can see a kind of similar pattern. The AR or the ARE at the end of that infinitive verb is dropped, and we add an O at the end to the infinitive stem. This conjugates it for the first person present tense. So we're changing the infinitive in each one of these cases just by dropping off that ending and then putting another ending on it, and that tells us who does the action and when. In this case, again, it's I in the present tense, the first person present tense. And all of those languages use the exact same pattern. They're very much related to each other. Now, you may notice that these conjugations don't have a pronoun. You don't have to say I in front of the verb. This is because in Romance languages, it's not really necessary. The verb form not only tells you in what tense something happens, but it also tells you who or what is doing the action. So in these languages like Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese, pronouns do exist, but they're not always necessary to say. So we're going to carry this convention over to our fantasy language, Seidal, as well. So in Romance languages, you'll hear things like I and you and they at certain times when it needs to be stressed as to who the subject is or to clarify things, but a lot of times you don't need to say them. So we're going to make it the same way in Seidol. I'm going to put those pronouns in the examples that I'm going to give you as just to show you what they are, first of all, and to help clarify things. But if one were to speak Seidol, you could drop those pronouns off and it would be totally intelligible. So we'll have to define the pattern for infinitives in Seidol, and we're going to base it again on the Romance languages that we've been using for inspiration. All these Seidol infinitives are going to end in ari to make it very easy. The real Romance languages have 3 different endings each, and each of those endings changes in different ways from each other, so we're going to simplify that in a really major way and just making every single infinitive form verb in Seidol end in ari. So we have a couple of examples here. Dentari is to sit, tentari is to stand, folari is to speak, kunturi is to remember, and rejari is to laugh. Now to conjugate these for the present tense, we only have to drop the ari part of the infinitive and add the correct suffix. So for I, we add uk. For you, singular, we add ej. For he, she, or it, we add a. For we add ak. For you, plural, or you all, we add uj. And for they, we add am. So we'll use these rules to conjugate the verb dentari, to sit. So I sit is yi dentuk. You, singular, sit is she denej. He, she, or it sits is ene denta. Ende denta or efe denta. We sit is nude dentak. You plural sit or you all sit is shede dentuj. And they sit is elri dentam. And remember that you don't have to include the pronoun in front of it. It's implied in the conjugation, so you could say things just like dentuk I sit instead of ye dentuk, and it would be totally pronounceable. I'm just including those pronouns there so we can be clear on what's what. Okay, the second tense that we'll be going over in this video is called the preterit tense. The preterit tense is the past tense, more simply. It demonstrates an action that has happened in the past. So examples in English include I sat or she spoke, and these actions occurred before the speaker is making note of them. So the conjugations in Seidol will follow the same pattern as the present tense. All we have to do to conjugate for the preterit tense is drop the ari at the end of the infinitive and add the appropriate suffix. So it's going to be just like the present tense, the same pattern. It's just going to have different endings to indicate that it happened in the past. So for I, the ending is going to be et. For you, singular, it's going to be eush. For he, she, or it, it's going to be e. For we, it's ek. For you, plural, or you all, it's eshk. And for they, it's m. So to make an example for this tense, we're going to use the infinitive rejari, which means laugh. I laugh is yi rejet. You singular laugh is she regeus. He, she, or it laughs is ene rege, ende rege, or efe rege. We laugh is nude regek. You plural laugh or you all laugh is shede regesk. And they laugh is erri regem. So as you can see with the examples from these two tenses, conjugation, I think, in Seidal is very easy, especially as compared to English. And I do believe that's true of the Romance languages. Now, those of you that are familiar with the real-world Romance languages, just like any language, there are a lot of irregularities in the way that verbs are conjugated and used. Throughout all these videos, I'm going to leave out irregularities. I don't really think it's necessary for our purposes here. I will make a video towards the end of this series called something like Finishing Touches, where I'm going to show you how to introduce irregularities on purpose to make it look more realistic. And that's something that I really believe in doing in everything. When I write something, I write a story, I make the world and the characters in it imperfect on purpose. Things don't work, packages don't arrive on time, workers slack off, the government is ineffective. I try to make things look believable on purpose. That way it reflects reality. I mean, the real world works that way. Nothing is perfect. And I try to show that even though it's a fantasy setting, I want to make it as believable as possible. And I always use, and you guys know this by watching my videos, you know that I take inspiration from the way things really work in the real world. That's why I spend a lot of time trying to learn things like history and language and economics and politics so that I can use that in writing little tidbits of the real world and infuse them in what I do so that it has a kind of feel that, yeah, that really did happen sometime, someplace. This isn't just a story that some guy made up. This might be an account of something that happened in another world or another time. At least that's what I aim to do. You guys will have to tell me whether I actually pull that off or not. So that wraps up this particular video about basic verbs. We reviewed the infinitive forms of verbs and then gave two conjugations for different tenses, the present tense and the preterite tense. The next video is going to go on to discuss some more tenses. I plan on doing the past continuous tense, the future tense, and get into some reflexive verbs as well. I also want to do a numbers video in the near future that introduces a numbering system that I've been working on. It's very different from our own Arabic numeral system that we use, and it has its own symbols. It uses a totally different way of annotating numbers, and I think it's pretty cool. I'm still working out on how to make it work as well as I want to. So when that comes along, I'll definitely do that video. I'm not in a rush to do that yet, but I think numeral systems and mathematics are an important part of developing another language because it should not be taken for granted that everything is going to work exactly the way that we're used to it. It really shouldn't, to be honest. So again, I want to thank all of you for watching this video, and please leave your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to rate and share this video if you liked it, and subscribe to the Grauwelt channel. I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.